And one of the things that I always really liked when I was in high school, and it only happened a couple times, was like class constitutions, where it's like the first day of class, like the very first thing you do besides like saying your name and your favorite ice cream flavor or whatever,
Sure.
was like, okay, what does fifth period, not what does Mr. M's entire associates class, what does fifth period, what do they want the rules to be? Do you guys want to have a 5-minute break? Do you guys want to have this? And then if a class decides the rules and they stick to it, then you can reward them with that. If they all agree on a rule set and then they are just totally taking advantage of it, you can take that freedom away. And I feel like, kind of giving that choice initially, or starting off with a lack of choice and then the classes, or you could do the reverse, like starting off with a lack of choice. Like I know a lot of teachers are like, okay, we're going to start with a seating chart. And then after a month, if you guys are good, you can pick where you want to sit. And I think that kind of stuff is golden. Like I remember when I was a kid, like whenever we were given the opportunity to earn more freedom, I feel like 90% of kids, but like, there's always going to be kids that do not care whatsoever. Nothing you will do will make them care. But most kids, I think, do respond to being treated not like adults, but like not like children. Like when you tell a 12-year-old, yeah, they're still 12, but when I tell a 12-year-old 7th grader, like, hey, if you do this, you can do this. I feel like they respect that versus me being like, nope, sorry, my way or the highway. Which you do need to do that sometimes. Yeah. But for kids, I think that earn it, I think it is nice to give them more choice, because it's all. I think it's going to just increase their willingness to do work for you. Like the mean teachers. No one wants to do work in the mean teachers class
because they don't get freedom.
Yeah, and sometimes you do need to be a mean teacher. I've been a mean teacher, but I feel like if you are so strict and you just never give them any choice, I feel like you're not even giving kids a chance to give you a chance.
Yeah.
But I know everything. Everyone's different.
What do you think is talking about let's say the 10% where you say that, or the small amount that doesn't want that? Why do you think they wouldn't want that?
I think there's a lot of factors. Like I've only been doing this for just over a year, sure. But like I have, and I know it's like people when we were kids, our parents would tell us like, oh, bullies just have a hard home life. And when you're a kid, you're like, what? There's me. Yeah. They don't like me because I have glasses, or they don't like me because I like Star Wars. Like, and I feel like I was in that camp where I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, but then I realized that was probably even a piece of my own privilege. Like I had parents that didn't hit me. I always knew where my next meal was coming from. I didn't go to school with like a hateful heart. But then now that I'm working there, I do see kids where it's like, they just have so much like hate and just so much like sorrow in their heart. And it's like, you're only 12. And it's like, I feel for them. It's like, I can't believe that you're already this hard into the world at age 12, at age 13. And I feel like whenever I do, I'm not there that much. I'm only there once a week, on break. Sometimes like winter break, I was there every day, but like for the most part, and then I'll walk up to a teacher, a normal teacher who's there every day. And I'll say, man, this student X was really giving me a hard time today. And they'll say, oh, student X's parents are going through a divorce right now. Or, oh, student X, he only eats at school. Like, that's the only, like, he gets breakfast and lunch because it's free, And then I feel like that does offer a different perspective, where you're not justifying the behavior.
You give them humanity.
And it gives them humanity. And then you're able to look at it and say, okay, well, this kid never does anything, a single thing I say. And I can think of multiple examples where it's like, I'm like, this student was just never doing anything I say. And then I find out what they go through, and you take a different perspective and you say, okay, well, hey, why do you not care? Oh, well, my parents don't care about my grades. Okay, well, do you care about your grades? No, middle school grades don't count. And I'm like, well, yes, when you are looking at it, when you are applying for a job in 6 years, they will not look at your middle school grades. That is true, but it's about building a foundation and building habits. And I feel like a lot of the students who don't care, they haven't been told that at home. Like I remember, like my parents told me, like, hey, it's all, building habits, patterns, doing your homework. You might seem counterproductive, it might seem redundant to you, but it's teaching you to keep up with your tasks, right? It's teaching you to like, be always thinking about stuff. And I feel like when kids aren't told that at home, like they're told middle school doesn't matter. I will get you in trouble if you get a referral. That's the biggest kicker, is the kids who don't face consequences at home. There's only so much you can do. You suspend a kid, then he gets to go home and play Xbox for 3 days. Like there's some kids where you can't take a conventional punishment path with. Yeah. Like I know multiple students who they've gathered enough information where they know that when they're suspended, they sit at home and play video games. That's not a punishment. You're just letting them go home for a couple days. Like you're giving them a 5-day weekend. And so I feel like the kid, like you were saying, like the 10% that they just don't vibe with anything adults are telling them. I feel like is often because they don't have a strong presence outside of the home. And it's a general statement, but it's like they have never had an adult tell them things like, you need to do this to be sick. Like, you need to do this. You need to build healthy habits. So it's like, why, if your parents aren't telling you that, why would you listen to me?
True.
You know, there's only so much you can do.
Well, in those situations, they also don't feel loved. They don't have a sense of, they don't feel like they're appreciated or wanted. And when they go to school, they can't identify with a teacher who, and a teacher's not going to love you the same way a parent should, but a teacher can take on your struggles and recognize that they're going through something, and they can take that on, and this child just doesn't understand that either. And I think that it's interesting that you can even see how it plays out with those people, because there's that pressure that they don't understand what's going on, but it is going on.
Yeah.
And it's because that could, and you see it play out in the future where, and often sometimes it is true that those people will often end up being the people that are going to control their children, the future in the same way. And then it's going to,
it's just like the cycle.
Itself.
Yeah.
It's a cycle.
That's why I feel like people don't often underestimate like the value of teaching. It's like it's easy. I mean, like, obviously I'm going to say that I'm going to be a teacher, but it's like, even me, like I had a good home life. Like I said, like I didn't have to worry about like, you know, like being scared or like cold at home, you know?
Sure.
But like there were things that I was more comfortable telling teachers. Like I remember like initially when I was in like high school and like some of like my mental health issues came back, I didn't want to tell my parents at first because I was like, oh, well, I don't want to burden my parents with that. So I would tell my Spanish teacher, I would tell my forestry teacher, I would tell my math teacher, like, hey, I'm really struggling with this thing. And they were there for me. And it's like, it's not that that's not my parents weren't there for me, because when I told them eventually that they were. But it's like, it was nice knowing that I had those other outlets. And I think that's what really inspired me to go into teaching, was like, I had so many teachers that made such a positive influence on my life and a positive impact on me. And it's like, I could go to them to talk about the 49ers game that happened yesterday, or I could go to talk to them about like, hey, I'm really struggling with this thing. Can I just eat lunch with you today and just talk? And I really feel like that is like the value. And I feel like as what's being undervalued, like teachers are, I think, very undervalued in society. And like people don't, like, I think teachers get a lot of hate a lot of times. And I think that people
they're
don't,
an emotional burden that most people aren't aware of.
Yeah. Like, you know, like I in the least weird sounding way I could possibly say this, I think about the kids a lot. Yeah. Like when I'm, so
no, it makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes
like,
sense.
And so it's like, because I don't even live in the town that I work in. I live in Corvallis, like from Monday through Thursday for the most part. But it's like, you know, but like, so I'm only there one day a week usually. But it's like the things remind me, and it's like, I hope they're doing okay today. You know, do my prayers in the morning, pray for the kids. You know, and so it's like I'm only there once a week, and I'm like stressed out on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, I really hope student X is acting good today. They've really been struggling lately. And I think often people don't realize like the effect that we can have, you know. And so it always bums me out when you look at like the national budget and it's like, oh, record low education. I'm like, oh, that's sad. But you know, it is what it is. But do
you think there's a balance too? Do you think you could take too much on of the students that
I think you absolutely can. I've talked to some teachers that have told me that sometimes you need to just
disconnect.
Like in my experience, also being a young teacher, where it's like it's like, okay, so most of the kids I work with are like 12 to 14, right? And I think this also ties into me growing up in church. Like I've been around people of every age my entire life. Like when I was born, I was around tons of adults, tons of people. And then when I was their age, I had, you know, older kid friends. Like there were older kids that I look up to, you know, you know, and now we're the older kids. So it's like, but I notice at church, like there's kids I'll walk up to, talk to them and stuff, you know, like I'm their youth camp counselor. They're that age. I'm so used, me personally, to being around kids because of church. Yeah. And like, it's not weird for me to be talking at church as a 20-year-old with a 14-year-old. That's not weird because we've all, for the most part, it's a community. We've all grown up together. So it's like, I feel like I kind of have carried that over where it's like, I'm still an adult. I'm still the teacher. I'm still an authority figure. But it's like, I'm very comfortable just eating lunch with the kids, talking about sports, you know, right? Talking about whatever. And so I have noticed like, there have been times where there's a student that's really acting out and I'm just like, man, like I I cannot believe like again that they got suspended again. Like, are you kidding me? Like, man, I want them to succeed. And it's like, it's coming from a place of care.
Yeah.
But there are times, I think it happens a lot with young teachers. And I mean, myself included, and I've just seen other young teachers and have been told this by older teachers, like, oh, you're going through that when you first start out where you care. Not that you stop caring, but you care so much that it just stresses you out.
And maybe there's a balance of knowing what to care for and what to recognize you don't have control over.
Yeah.
Because there is a truth that you want to show that you care for these kids, but there's truth that most of the things that could potentially change the biggest impacts in their life aren't in your control.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm not going to be able to control if their parents stay together. I'm not going to be able to control where they're sleeping at night.
You can't fill that role.
Yeah.
You can't fill a parental role.
Yeah.
You can give them a role model, and you could demonstrate how to act, but they still go back home to the same place. And
yeah, exactly.
And you have a limited amount of time where you're with them. And I think that can create a lot of pressure even on teachers, which maybe there's a balance. And there is something to the fact that I guess as you age and as you said it, it seems that you might gain wisdom and recognize that you can't control any of this. So why add pressure to your life when you don't need to? Because that can just